All right, so Thorn, bless his heart, thinks a journal's a good idea for my time in Tower 4. After his solid 30 minutes on the park's weirdness, I'm not entirely sure what time even is anymore. But hey, can't hurt, right? Wouldn't want some robo-smokey in a ranger hat thinking I'm reaching for a s'more when I'm actually, just existing. So let me paint you a picture of my current digs. 50 plus miles in any direction to the nearest anything. Tower 4 sits smack dab on this huge hilltop, giving me a killer 360-degree view. Inside this old fire lookout during the day, it's pretty bright thanks to all the windows wrapping around the cabin. The walls are painted this chill, muted green. The floor's definitely seen some stuff. Feels like you can hear the history in the creaks of the weathered wood. My bed for the next 6 months is shoved against one wall, simple frame, thin mattress, and my sleeping bag. Underneath, my stash of grub, cardboard boxes, and a couple of metal bins, keeping me from hangry meltdowns. To the right, there's this kind of small wooden desk by the corner window, totally covered in my watch gear and random stuff. Got a stack of well-loved books chilling next to a red first aid kit. And this old school radio thing for comms. My kitchen's a tiny propane burner tucked by the desk, ready to whip up some gourmet dehydrated meals. 2 wooden chairs are hanging out by the desk. One's got a plaid cushion, the other's just plain wood. Oh yeah, and then there's this massive map spread out on a table, my go-to for keeping tabs on the area. Peeking through the windows is just, wow. Rolling hills with dry grass and patches of pine trees stretching out to these hazy mountain ranges in the distance. It's super peaceful out there, kind of the opposite of the cozy but basic setup in here. Feels like I'm the only one out here doing this weirdly important job. Hanging on the wall is this serious-looking 300 Winchester Magnum rifle. There's a note taped next to it saying, "The ammo's in the locker across the room." Sweet.
Yo, kid, comms check? You alive and kicking over there?
Thorn's voice crackled through the radio. Hey Thorn, yeah, just getting the lay of the land. Quick question, that Winchester, what's the deal? He chuckled a bit.
Well, kid, pretty simple, even with all the weirdness. Just remember it's you and a whole lot of forest out there.
Got it, I said, glancing at the rifle again.
Don't get so caught up in the crazy stuff that you forget there's regular crazy, too. You know, the furry kind with claws.
Just gonna do a quick check on things and the weather, then crash.
Roger that. Get some sleep. That hike in ain't no joke. Catch you in the morning. Over and out.
The static died, and it was just me and the quiet hum of the tower again. Long night ahead. The silence after Thorn's sign-off felt thick, almost a physical presence in the small tower. I ran a hand over the cool steel of the Winchester, the weight reassuring in a way the park's oddities weren't. Furry kind with claws, Thorn's words echoed in my head. Right. Between the temporal tourists in red coats and whatever the heck those lost hikers were, it was easy to forget the baseline wilderness dangers. I crossed the creaking floorboards to the metal storage locker and found the box of 300 WinMag cartridges. They felt substantial in my palm. I loaded the rifle, the bolt action smooth and familiar. Even in this strange new reality, some things remained constant. The reliable mechanics of a well-made firearm, the primal need for self-preservation. Slinging the rifle over my shoulder, I grabbed my binoculars and stepped out onto the narrow catwalk that encircled the tower's observation deck. The night was a deep velvety black, punctuated by the faint, distant glow of what I assumed were stars. Though honestly, after Thorn's briefing, I wouldn't have been surprised if one of them turned out to be a misplaced Victorian street lamp. The wind whispered through the pines, a sound that should have been soothing but tonight felt a little watchful. I scanned the 360-degree panorama, my eyes adjusting to the low light. The forest stretched out like an endless, inky ocean, the occasional glint of moonlight on a distant ridge the only break in the darkness. I did a quick check of the rudimentary weather instruments, anemometer spinning gently, barometer holding steady. Nothing out of the ordinary on the meteorological front, at least. It was the unordinary I was more concerned about. As I completed my circuit, a flicker of movement caught my eye in the western quadrant. Too large for a deer, too upright for a bear. I focused the binoculars. The low light made it difficult to discern details, but there was a definite bipedal silhouette moving through the trees carrying what looked like lanterns. Moonshiners? Thorn had mentioned them, a long-standing tradition in these hills, apparently unfazed by temporal anomalies or killer robots. Or were they Something else. One of the lost, perhaps. The way they moved seemed too deliberate, too purposeful for someone supposedly disoriented. I kept them in my sights for a long minute, their lights bobbing and weaving through the dense foliage. They seemed to be heading deeper into the park, away from any established trails or campsites. Curiosity warred with caution. Thorne's warning about not getting one-sided on the strange resonated. Maybe it was just moonshiners. Maybe. Deciding against immediate engagement, Thorne's instructions were clear: observe and report unless there was an immediate threat. I marked their general direction and time in a small notebook I'd found on the desk. Thorne would want to know. The rest of the night passed without incident. The wind picked up slightly. I retreated inside. Sleep was a long time coming, my mind replaying Thorne's warnings, the image of the shadowy figures in the woods, and the unsettling thought of a robotic bear lurking somewhere out there in the darkness. Its cheerful catchphrase a chilling promise. Just before dawn, a faint, rhythmic thumping sound started, seemingly coming from the east. It was too regular to be natural, too deep to be an animal. My hand instinctively went to the Winchester leaning against the wall. Whatever was out there, my quiet vigil in Tower 4 was likely over. The park's oddities were stirring again, and I had a feeling this morning's comms check with Thorne would be a lot more interesting than a weather report. The rhythmic thumping was getting hard to ignore, kind of vibrating the whole tower. Definitely not a heartbeat, more like a washing machine on overdrive. I crept over to the east windows, squinting as the sky started to lighten up. And there they were. A bunch of soldiers in faded red coats looking like they'd just stumbled out of a history book or a really bad costume party. But the way they were moving, stiff, jerky, like puppets with tangled strings. Thorne's time-lost redcoats, all right. But they weren't just wandering around. Leading the pack was this janky-looking cart thing, all wood and rusty metal chugging along. It left a trail of stinky smoke, it appeared. My hand instinctively went to the Winchester. These guys weren't just aimlessly marching around. They had brought baggage. Literal, clunky, probably troublemaking baggage. Then, this high-pitched whine cut through the forest noise. The lead redcoat, looking even paler in the dawn light, held up a hand and the whole jerky crew stopped. They were reacting to something I couldn't hear yet. Then I heard it, a low, growly rumble getting closer fast. The redcoats started twitching, their old-school muskets wobbling in their hands. And then, lumbering out of the trees to the south was Smokey. But not the huggable kind. This was the creepy robot Smokey Thorne warned me about. His fuzzy face looked kinda off, his ranger hat was crooked, and one of his eyes was doing this weird flicker thing. He moved all stiff and clunky, like a toy with dead batteries trying to walk. The Robo-Bear's voice suddenly blared out, all tinny and distorted.
Only you can prevent forest fires.
Hearing that cheerful slogan coming out of that thing, seriously bone-chilling. The redcoats freaked. They fumbled with their muskets, one of them actually firing. Big flash, puff of smoke, but the musket ball just bounced right off Smokey's metal body. Seriously? Okay, things were officially going sideways. These history nerds were outmatched by a psycho robot. And that weird cart still didn't like the look of it. I shouldered the Winchester, lining up a shot on Smokey. Thorne said immediate threat, right? This metal monstrosity definitely qualified. But just as I was about to squeeze the trigger, this flash of fur shot out of the bushes to the west. It was that forest cat Thorne had mentioned, looking like a buffed-up house cat on steroids. It launched itself at Smokey, claws out, hissing like a busted steam pipe. Smokey stumbled back, his mechanical growl turning into this awful grinding and whirring noise. It was enough of a distraction. The redcoats, finally getting their act together, started hauling their janky cart back into the trees. Smart move, fellas. I lowered the rifle, just watching the chaos. Psycho robot bear, scaredy cat redcoats, and a house cat with serious attitude. Just another Tuesday in Whispering Pines. The cat, fur all puffed up, was still going at Smokey, who looked more confused than hurt. The robot just lumbered around, its programming clearly not ready for a feline beatdown. This was my chance to figure out what the heck was going on. While Robo-Smokey was dealing with his cat problem, I needed to see what those redcoats were up to, and maybe, just maybe, make some sense of this place. I grabbed the radio, my voice low and fast. "Thorn, you awake? You are not going to believe what's happening over here."
Kid, you sound agitated. What's the situation?
"Agitated is putting it mildly," I muttered, still watching the bizarre standoff below. The cat, surprisingly agile, was now using Smokey's leg as a scratching post, sending sparks flying from the robot's joints. We've got time-displaced British redcoats looking jumpy, hauling a weird cart. And they just got ambushed by the animatronic Smokey. There was a beat of silence on the other end. Then a weary sigh.
The redcoats again, and Smokey's decided to make an early morning appearance? What in the Sam Hill is on that cart?
Haven't gotten close enough to see, but they seem pretty keen on getting it away from Smokey.
All right, kid. Here's the play. Keep eyes on the redcoats in that cart. See where they're headed. I'm patching you through to Ranger Davies. He's closer to your sector and knows a bit more about historical anomalies.
A new voice, crisp and professional, cut in.
Tower 4, this is Davies. Thorn filled me in on the highlights reel. Redcoats and a malfunctioning Smokey, huh? Sounds like my Tuesday. Glad to hear someone's taking this in stride.
They were heading west, deeper into the woods. That cart looked heavy, maybe some kind of equipment.
Could be anything with those blokes. Last time they showed up, they were trying to build some kind of siege engine. Don't ask. As for Smokey, we've been tracking his erratic movements. Seems like his internal systems are glitching out something fierce.
He just got his metal butt handed to him by a very angry cat.
Huh. Whispering Pines. Never a dull moment. Look, I'm about 20 minutes out. Keep your distance from both the redcoats and Smokey. Let's see where this little historical reenactment society is headed.
I kept my binoculars trained on the tree line where the redcoats had disappeared, the rhythmic thumping of their cart fading into the distance. Robo-Smokey, meanwhile, was still batting uselessly at the cat, who seemed to view the whole thing as a particularly engaging game. Davies, you mentioned historical anomalies. Any idea what these guys are usually after?
Depends on the batch. Sometimes it's resources, lumber, water. Other times, well, Thorn wasn't kidding about the oddities. We've had them try to claim sections of the park in the name of the crown, attempt to tax campers, even try to recruit squirrels into their ranks. They're not exactly strategic geniuses.
Recruiting squirrels.
Don't ask, just keep your eyes peeled. And for goodness sake, try not to engage. We don't want to start an international incident with 18th century England.
Understood, I replied, though a small part of me wondered how exactly one did start an international incident with a bunch of time-lost soldiers. The cat, apparently bored with the malfunctioning robot, sauntered off into the undergrowth, leaving Smokey to twitch and whir in solitude. The rhythmic thumping of the redcoat's cart was now just a faint echo. I settled back onto my stool, the Winchester resting within easy reach. 20 minutes until Davies arrived. 20 minutes to try and wrap my head around the fact that my job description apparently included babysitting homicidal robots and preventing historical invasions. Whispering Pines. Thorn had definitely undersold the oddities. My journal was going to need a whole new chapter, and maybe a glossary of temporal displacement terms. The 20 minutes crawled by, punctuated only by the chirping of unseen birds and the distant, unsettling whirring of Smokey the bear as its systems continued to malfunction. I kept my gaze fixed on the western tree line, occasionally sweeping the forest with my binoculars, half expecting to see a line of red-coated soldiers marching back into view, perhaps armed with, well, whatever weaponry an 18th century siege engine might involve. Then, a different sound reached my ears, the unmistakable crunch of tires on the rough track leading to the tower. A green National Park Service pickup truck, its roof lights flashing amber, rumbled into view below. Ranger Davies? He hopped out, a sturdy figure in his uniform, a serious expression on his face. He carried a radio and what looked like a taser on his belt, but no visible rifle. I figured he probably had one secured inside the vehicle.
Tower 4, Davies is on scene.
Copy that, Davies. Redcoats headed west about 20 minutes ago. They had some kind of wheeled cart. Robo-Smokey's still malfunctioning about a quarter-mile south of my position, last seen having a disagreement with a very territorial feline. Davies looked south, a flicker of amusement crossing his lips.
A cat took down Smokey? Well, that's a new one for the incident reports. All right, I'm going to try and intercept the Redcoats. You stay put, keep an eye on Smokey, and let me know if anything else pops up.
Roger that. Be careful, Davies. Who knows what kind of contraptions those guys have on that cart? Davies gave a curt nod and headed back to his truck. I watched as he navigated the winding track, disappearing into the dense foliage in the direction the Redcoats had taken. Now it was just me and the lingering mechanical groans of the rogue animatronic. I decided to get a closer look at Smokey, keeping a safe distance, of course. Slinging the Winchester back over my shoulder, I descended the tower steps, the wood groaning under my boots. As I approached Smokey's last known location, the whirring grew louder, interspersed with occasional jerky movements of its limbs. The big forest cat was nowhere in sight, probably off somewhere grooming its well-deserved victory. Smokey was even creepier up close. Its fuzzy exterior looked worn and slightly singed in places, and one of its plastic eyes was indeed flickering erratically. It was muttering its catchphrase in a broken loop.
Only you!
Only
Prevent forest
fires. Remember.
I circled it cautiously, keeping the rifle ready. It didn't seem to register my presence, its internal systems clearly in a state of disarray. Whatever had caused it to malfunction, it had definitely taken a toll. Then I noticed something glinting in the dirt near Smokey's feet. I crouched down for a closer look. It was a small, metallic object, intricately carved and radiating a faint, almost imperceptible warmth. It looked ancient, and definitely not like anything that should be found near a malfunctioning animatronic bear. I carefully picked it up, its smooth surface cool against my fingertips despite the faint warmth. It felt wrong, out of place, like a puzzle piece from a completely different set. Just then, my radio crackled to life.
Tower 4, this is Davies. I've located the Redcoats, and you were right about that cart. Looks like they're trying to set up some kind of miniature cannon.
A miniature cannon? These guys were escalating quickly. Copy that, Davies. I found something strange near Smokey. Some kind of old metal artifact. Feels out of place. There was a pause on the other end.
An artifact? Describe it.
I hesitated, turning the object over in my hand. Small, metallic, intricate carving, feels old. Almost otherworldly. Another pause. Then Davy's voice, a new note of urgency creeping in.
Kid, listen to me. Stay away from that thing. Don't touch it any more than you have to. That might be what's causing some of the fluctuations we've been seeing.
Fluctuations? Was that Davy's code word for time warps and killer robots? Copy that, Davies. I'm backing away from the artifact. What's your situation with the mini cannon brigade?
They're not exactly crack shots, but a cannon's a cannon. I'm going to try and politely dissuade them from their artillery ambitions. Keep that artifact secure, kid. It might be the key to understanding some of the weirdness around here.
I carefully placed the strange object in a Ziploc bag I found in my pack. A miniature cannon. An ancient artifact. A malfunctioning robot bear. And me, stuck in the middle of it all in a fire lookout tower in the middle of nowhere. Thorne was right. This was going to be an interesting 6 months, and I had a feeling it was about to get a whole lot weirder. Back in the relative safety of Tower 4, the small metallic artifact sat on the corner of the desk, radiating that faint, unsettling warmth. I kept a wary eye on it, remembering Davy's urgent tone. Could this little trinket really be the source of all the park's temporal shenanigans? It seemed too small, too innocuous to cause such widespread weirdness. The radio crackled again.
Tower 4, Davies here. Situation with the historical artillery enthusiasts is contained. Turns out, aiming a miniature cannon accurately is harder than it looks.
Glad to hear it, Davies. Any idea what they were planning to bombard?
Your guess is as good as mine. Maybe they took issue with the lack of proper tea service in the 21st century. Anyway, I'm heading back your way. We need to secure that artifact and figure out what it is.
Copy that. It's emitting a slight warmth, and it feels old. Like really old.
Understood. Don't touch it unnecessarily. I should be there in about 15 minutes.
The next 15 minutes were spent in a state of nervous anticipation, my gaze constantly shifting between the artifact and the windows overlooking the forest. The usual peaceful sounds of the woods, birdsong, rustling leaves, now seemed just an amplifier of the ominous situation I had found myself in. When Davies finally arrived, he approached the tower. When he entered, his eyes immediately were drawn to the small metallic object on the desk. He was wearing thin gloves now.
All right, let's have a look at this.
He carefully picked up the artifact, examining it from all angles.
The metal. It's unlike anything I've seen. And these carvings, they don't match any known historical style.
He pulled out a small, sophisticated-looking scanner from his pack and ran it over the object. The device emitted a series of rapid beeps and then displayed a string of characters on its small screen that looked like nothing I'd ever seen.
Well, that's not helpful. The composition is unusual. And the energy signature is fluctuating, just like I suspected.
So, you think this thing is causing the time slips and the robot meltdowns?
It's the most likely culprit. We've found similar objects in other hotspots within the park, though none quite like this. They seem to act as conduits, maybe? Weak points in the fabric of space-time.
He carefully placed the artifact into a specialized containment case.
We need to get this back to the research lab. They have the equipment to analyze it properly.
Just then, the radio squawked again, this time with Thorne's voice, sounding more urgent than usual.
Davies, Tower 4, you there? We've got a situation brewing in Sector 7. Reports of multiple temporal displacements and some kind of entity. Hikers are reporting seeing people who vanish into thin air.
Davies' eyes met mine.
All right, kid. Looks like your peaceful watch just got a whole lot more complicated. All right, kid. I'm going to leave you alone for a while. If you don't mind, I'm going to need to borrow the 300 Win Mag. Lock up when I leave. I need to head to Sector 7. You stay here, keep an eye on things, and for heaven's sake, if you see anything else unusual, report it immediately. And don't touch anything else that looks out of place.
The silence on the radio was heavy. I was alone, miles from any backup, with entities that could seemingly blink in and out of existence roaming the woods around me. And somewhere out there was a malfunctioning robot bear and a bunch of time-traveling redcoats who might decide to stage a comeback. I double-checked the meager supplies I had, a first aid kit, some energy bars, a canteen of water. Definitely not equipped for dealing with interdimensional disappearances. My gaze fell on the empty space where the Winchester had been. I really wished I had that rifle right now. Suddenly, a twig snapped outside the tower. My heart leaped into my throat. I moved silently to the window, peering out cautiously. Standing at the base of the tower, looking directly up at me, was one of the lost. It was a girl maybe in their 20s from the group I had seen earlier. Its pale face was unnervingly still, its eyes wide and vacant. It didn't speak, didn't move, just stared with that unsettlingly blank gaze. A wave of pure primal fear washed over me. This wasn't a lost hiker. This was something else. Something wrong. I backed away from the window slowly, my breath catching in my throat. The girl remained there, its silent, unnerving stare fixed on the tower. Then, it raised a hand. Not in a wave, but in a slow, deliberate gesture. I didn't wait to see what happened next. I scrambled away from the window, putting as much distance as I could between myself and that vacant stare. Whatever the lost were, they were here. And they knew I was here. My quiet watch in Tower 4 had just become a fight for something I didn't even understand. As night approached, I remained locked up in the tower, from time to time glancing out the window. The girl hadn't left. Shit. Then the noise of the forest became silent, followed by the unique sound of spurs of somebody walking towards the tower down the path. Lifted my head, and there he was, the man out of time. He had a rugged and principled demeanor. He was weathered by the elements, his face tanned and etched with lines that spoke of long days under the sun and countless hard nights. His clothing, sturdy denim canvas pants tucked into well-worn leather boots, a simple but durable cotton shirt, and a vest made of leather or maybe wool. He wore a wide-brimmed hat shielding his eyes and adding to his imposing silhouette. He acted keen and observant, constantly scanning his surroundings. But I could sense a hint of weariness, but also a spark of determination, and a deep-seated sense of justice ingrained within his very deliberate walk. His jawline firm, suggesting a resolute nature, and his mouth set in a way that implied he'd choose his words carefully. He wasn't the biggest man in stature, but carried himself with a quiet confidence that comes from experience and a belief in what's right. The Colt Peacemaker worn openly in a well-oiled holster on his hip, not as a boast, but as a tool, a tangible representation of that inescapable balance he spoke of. It was clean and well-maintained, reflecting the respect he has for its power and the responsibility that comes with it. In essence, I got the feeling he's seen a thing or two, a man whose presence commanded respect, not through intimidation, but through an aura of quiet strength and unwavering conviction. He was a figure who seemed to inspire a sense of both caution to the wicked and hope in the downtrodden. He wasn't now maybe 50 feet away from the tower, and that lost enigma of types who had been silently taunting me. I full raised my head up. The pistolier spoke, a grainy edge to his voice.
Son, is this here lost causing you trouble? Don't be shy, come on down here. I reckon you'll be in safe hands with me here.
Having carefully descended the tower, I now stood a mere 5 feet from the pistolier when, like shadows stretching in the fading light, 5 more of the lost emerged from the dense underbrush.
Things? There's 3 goddamn things that really get my spurs in a bunch. Just plain rubs me the wrong way. Being, disrespect, stealing from your fellow man, and punching down on someone when they're already down. And wouldn't you know it, you fellas have gone and done well, almost all of them. A man's word and his name ought to god dang mean something in this forsaken here world. There's something about the matter of kicking a fella when he's down. Ain't no honor in that, not a lick. Now, I ain't one for trouble, not by nature, that is, but sometimes, well, trouble just has a way of finding a fella, you see. And well, this here is my Colt Peacemaker. It's, well, that inescapable balance. It makes things fair when, well, they ain't. Gives a voice to ones that ain't got one. It's a beautiful thing, don't you think? A beautiful thing. Retribution to the unrighteous and the god-damn wicked.
The pistolier favored me with a swift wink, a silent acknowledgement before his hand moved with blurring speed. The Colt roared, spitting flame and filling the evening air with the acrid tang of gunpowder. His swiftness was unsettling to witness. In a display of practiced lethality, he fanned the hammer of his peacemaker, holding the trigger steady while his thumb blurred across the hammer spur. The weapon bucked and roared, unleashing a terrifyingly rapid volley that somehow seemed to sacrifice no accuracy. The first of the lost crumpled without so much as a gasp. The second, driven by a desperate surge, charged forward only to meet a precisely placed bullet between its vacant eyes. As for the remaining 3, foolishly clustered together at the edge of the tree line, the Colt's report sounded as a single, devastating crack, yet all 3 fell as if struck by the same invisible force. With a fluid spin, the pistolier returned his weapon to its holster with an almost theatrical grace. By the time the sheer speed and efficiency of the encounter registered in my mind, both he and the fallen had vanished into the encroaching twilight, leaving only the lingering scent of gun smoke and the unnerving silence of the forest.